a 10-year period.
Yeah.
So approximately between 2 and 4 times what the Home Office was saying it would cost the Home Office to do it.
Okay, let's move on to opposition view. And the gentleman asked about the Conservative Party, but obviously we also want to know about LibDem policy. Don't want to cut them out. Chris, Conservative Party policy on ID cards.
Okay, well, I'm in the slightly unusual position of being the person, if we win the election, who will wield the axe. And I, this week, I've been writing my first 100-day plan, and the first item I wrote on the list was axe ID cards. The practical reality is this scheme is now completely cockeyed. A voluntary scheme, I mean, how many people are going to say, I don't want to go for a curry tonight, I'm going to spend 30 quid on my ID card? It's not going to happen. A voluntary scheme won't work. It's going to cost vast amounts to put in kit to read ID cards in the health service, for example, where some people will have them, some people won't. It's just going to collapse in chaos. The actual number that Alan Johnson reported to the House was £900 million. When asked the question, and he told us because it was a voluntary scheme, people would sign up for it, it would break even. Asked the question, okay, how many people do you need to break even? He didn't know. And the answer is very straightforward. You can do the maths. £900 million, 30 quid, that's 30 million people, that's 50% of the population volunteering. It's not going to happen. Scheme has to go. In answer to the question about how we deal with the other issues, I think in some places the government's got it right, and in other places it's got it wrong. And I particularly want to look at issues like the borders database. I do want us to maintain a record of who comes into and out of the country, but I don't want us to maintain detailed information about all your travel movements, who you went with, how you paid, etc., for a decade-long period. And so I think we need to take another look at that contact point. I have real misgivings about, I know my colleague Michael Gove, who controls this, is also sharpening his axe on that. I am all in favour of maintaining a register of children who are perceived to be at risk. I'm all in favour of allowing schools to input saying we're worried about little Johnny. I'm also in favour of allowing that data to be compared, for example, with police records of known drug addicts, so we know if a kid who's turning up at school looking gaunt lives in a house where there is a drug problem. I'm not in favour of maintaining a record of every single child in the UK. It's overkill, it's unnecessary, it's intrusive, and it opens up all the other issues that were mentioned. So I think it's about going back and saying, what's been done, what do we need to do, but actually if you start from the premise we've gone too far, it's where do we rein back to a more sensible position?
Okay, thanks, Chris. Tom.
Can I just start by saying, of course, Chris has been on a journey on the issue of identity cards.
Yeah, and I freely admit that. I've changed my view over the years. 10 years ago, I was a supporter of the principle of ID cards. I've changed my mind.
In fact, Chris was a supporter of the identity cards before, in fact, the government had even thought of them. But I'm glad that his current position is that he's against them. I hope that he maintains that position if he should become Home Secretary. One of the members of the audience said something about the government wondering if the identity cards aren't going to do the job they're supposed to do. I think the issue for me now is what job are they supposed to be doing? I think the original justification was about terrorism, tackling terrorism. However, I think that has now been, the government are not talking in terms of identity cards having any great effect on terrorism. And the most recent pronouncements that the government have made on the issue is that this is about young people being able to prove how old they are if they're going to pubs. Well, there are already schemes that exist that work, I understand, quite effectively that do that. So the need for a £5 billion identity card so that young people can prove how old they are when they go to a pub, I think is not sufficient justification for a scheme of this size. Now, to answer the question about what areas do we think the Lib Dems where we should be rolling back what the government have proposed, then certainly contact points should go, and I'd encourage all parents to opt out of that. You can opt out of it if you, and we've done that. I think that, I mean, this is I'm afraid, perhaps symptomatic of what the government have done. I think the idea of being able to identify vulnerable children so that different agencies are able to work together and know which child is vulnerable is a good thing, but if you introduce a database that incorporates everyone's details, how effective can that be at actually singling out the children who are really vulnerable? Because you've got a sea of details in which you're trying to hone in on a very small percentage. So we would scrap that. We are also on record saying that we would scrap identity cards. And in relation to the DNA database, which may be something that we're about to go on to shortly, that is also an area where we think that there are far, far too many innocent people whose DNA data is held, including, quite astonishingly, something that we revealed a couple of months ago, where we found there was even a baby who had its DNA on the DNA database.
Okay, thanks.
Just right. Did you mean there are far too many innocent people on it, or that innocent people shouldn't be on it?
I think innocent people should not have their DNA retained on the DNA database.
Okay.